Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And today we are talking about Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Released in 2005, directed by Mike Newell, written by Steve Kloves from a novel from J.K. Rowling, and starring Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, of course. But now we have Ray Fiennes, Brendan Gleeson, and that might... and of course... the Batman, Robert Pattinson. He was a newcomer this time around. But I think that, for the most part, I guess, if you count Victor Crumb and Fleur and stuff like that, they're new as well. Before we jump into the movie, though, I do want to point out that we have a very special guest on this episode. My sister Janelle is joining us. Say hello, Janelle.
Hello. Glad to be here.
She is currently rereading the Harry Potter books, and she has been taking notes, actually. So... she is going to be kind of our resident Harry Potter expert. I think she's going to join us for the next few movies or all the rest of the movies. And she's going to chime in when we have questions about what was different between the book and the movie, or she can just point out, hey, this was different. But she'll chime in from time to time with her Harry Potter knowledge.
I was just going to mention, I recently read Tom Felton's memoir. And that is what kind of got me. I was like, ooh, now I got to reread the Harry Potter books. And originally, last year, I had this idea to read the books and watch the movies and compare them. But then it just didn't happen.
Sure.
So I was determined to make it happen this year. So far, I'm making it happen. I'm picking notes.
Right. Nice. She's currently reading Order. So she should be done with it by the time we decide to watch and do an episode on Order of the Phoenix. And then she said she already had notes on Half-Blood Prince of Deathly Hallows. So even if she doesn't quite finish those books by the time we record those episodes, she should still be able to talk about the books. So I have only read the book. I've read Prisoner twice, and I guess technically read Sorcerers twice because I read it and then I listened to an audiobook version of it years later. But the rest of them I've only read once, and I realized today that Goblet of Fire, it was probably 20 years ago. So I don't remember anything from the books, really. So it'll be really interesting, because I had a couple of questions watching the movie today about, why did this happen? Or is this explained a little better in the books and stuff like that? So, but Stu, I know that you still have not read the books, right?
I have not.
So, okay.
I'm not, it's not that I don't want to read them. It's just really hard for me to physically read a book. I get tremendously distracted, and right. I'll probably get about maybe 7 to 10 pages in before I'm thinking or doing something else.
Right. So, well, with that in mind, I would love to hear your thoughts on this movie when you saw it for the first time. What was your initial impression?
I really liked it. A lot of people say that this is their favorite.
Yeah.
I don't quite feel that way, although I do understand why people would say that. Prisoner of Azkaban is still my favorite, but this movie definitely takes a tremendous leap in production value between this one, the last one, and this one. And it takes a bit of a more serious tone. I wouldn't say it gets all the way into the drama area per se, at least not until the end. But for the most part, it's a little bit more serious than the first three movies. Even Prisoner of Azkaban, which was, in my opinion, significantly darker than the first two.
Right.
This movie feels a little bit more. Yeah. Adult.
They're getting rid of a little bit more of the, there's not as many silly moments.
Right.
Which, there wasn't a ton of silly moments in Prisoner, but the night bus and things like that. They're growing up. The movies themselves are getting older and maturing, I guess you could say.
Yeah, the kids are 14, and it feels like this is geared towards 14-year-olds, even with some of the subject matter, with the Tri-Wizard tournament, yes. And the rivalries and all of the teenage drama that happens in this movie, it definitely feels like it's geared towards teenagers, which is a good thing, because it's growing up with the reader, or for me, growing up with the viewer.
and this is also the first movie now, that you mentioned it. This is the first movie to be PG-13.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like you said, it is a much darker film than the previous ones.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the kids in the movies, it's kind of gearing more towards maybe a teenage audience rather than an 11-year-old audience. So,
right.
Even though I was an adult when I saw all of these for the first time, but
me too,
and read the books for the first time. So I can understand why people say it's their favorite as well, especially if you kind of like the second half of the movie is awesome.
Yeah.
And like when Voldemort comes back at the end and everything, like I can understand why people would just be hyped about
the
that.
last 40 minutes of this movie is great.
Yeah. But I watching it today, I was like, while I was watching, I was like, Prisoner is my favorite. Like, I like Prisoner better than this one. And it's not that this is a bad movie by any means, but I started to lose a little bit of interest during the ball scene. Like, I just didn't really care so much about the ball scene, which I understand isn't like, it's in the book. You got to put it in the movie. And it sets up the whole dynamic between Ron and Hermione and kind of letting us know that Ron has feelings, even though he may not even know it really yet, because he's clearly getting jealous and everything. But it's just that part I was kind of like, all right, let's get back to the tournament and stuff,
Yeah, those scenes are, they're there for character development and to show that these kids are not so much kids anymore. They're becoming young adults, and they got all these feelings that they don't understand, and they still trying to navigate growing up and being a teenager while also dealing with the annual Harry Potter problem.
Right.
But yeah, like you said, like I said previously, Prisoner is always going to be my favorite, and I think it's just because because of the aesthetic of it. It's a dark fantasy, and it leans all the way into the dark fantasy type stuff. It feels a little Tim Burton-y, which I like.
Yeah, Mad Eye Moody, I guess, kind of feels a little Tim Burton-y to me.
Yeah.
And I can see that. Plus, this one has dragons, so I mean that's pretty cool, and that's very fantasy. That's a big fantasy element.
I was actually talking about Prisoner feeling a little Tim Burton-y.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true, I guess.
Yeah.
I can see that.
This one feels a little less Tim Burton-y.
Well, I guess let's talk about this. Well, no, wait, hold on. Beginning of the movie. I love that there's no Dursleys. We've gotten 3 movies of the Dursleys. We don't need to see the Dursleys anymore. Janelle, were the Dursleys in the book?
Yep.
They were. Okay.
Yeah. When he has the dream, he wakes up from the dream, his scar is hurting him really bad, he's still at Privet Drive.
Okay.
So I was a little bit bummed because I can't even really explain it, but in the books, Uncle Vernon getting so angry, it's almost, and the chaos that always ensues is just delightful to me, like funny.
Right.
But what happens in the book is the Weasleys come to Privet Drive to get Harry to take him to the Quidditch World Cup. And he doesn't know, I think he finds out, if I'm remembering correctly, I think he finds out that they're coming, but he doesn't know how, because the last time they came to get him, it was in that car.
Right, the flying car.
But they end up using flu powder and arriving in the fireplace at the Dursleys, but they boarded it up because of all the owls that came in.
Right.
And so they, you hear their voices and they're like, where are we? What happened? And they realize what's going on and they burst through. And Fred and George end up giving Dudley ton toffee, which makes Dudley's tongue get real big and long, and you can just imagine the chaos that ensues. Mr. Weasley sends everybody back and takes care of Dudley. And it's just like a hilarious scene, and I understand why they chose to cut it.
Yeah.
But yes, they are in the beginning of the book.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if they had adapted that for the screen, it wouldn't have fit with the rest of this movie. So I see why they cut it out.
And it doesn't, obviously, it's like we've kind of seen it before with the chaos with the last movie, and Marge getting big and everything. And even in the first movie with Dudley getting the tail, like we've kind of seen that type of stuff before, and it doesn't really add anything to this story.
Right.
So it kind of makes sense that they just jump ahead to him already being with the Weasleys and the Triwizard Tournament.
Right. And that's probably the biggest difference was the number of characters that they did choose to eliminate, essentially. And I get it, because when you're doing a movie, you have a budget.
Sure.
You can only pay so many actors to,
Right.
I mean, and if they're not essential to the story, like you said, I can understand why
Right.
they chose
Yeah, if they don't need the Dursleys, then they don't need to pay for the Dursleys. It's kind of a bummer for those actors, but
Right.
but we will see the Dursleys again in the next movie. I do know we see Dudley at least, so.
Yeah.
But I like that in the Triwizard Tournament, seeing that was so cool too, which is, and I think that was kind of obviously important because we're introduced to Victor Crumb, but then also we see the Dark Mark and the Death Eaters showing up, and it was this big, dramatic scene. What did you think about that, Stu, when you saw that the first time? The big Dark Mark in the sky and the Death Eaters showing up and stuff.
I thought that was great. It just continues on the on what I loved about Prisoner of Azkaban, like the Dementors. The Dementors were one of my favorite, if not my favorite aspect of Prisoners. So the Death Eater showing up was just like a continuation of that, and just giving me more of what I loved from the previous movie.
Yeah. And so then after the Triwizard Tournament, then we go to Hogwarts, and there's this kind of dark cloud hanging over because of what had happened at the Triwizard Tournament, or not the Triwizard Tournament, the Quidditch World Cup. Did I say Triwizard Tournament earlier? Yeah, I meant Quidditch World Cup. My bad.
I was like, wow, we just jumped ahead.
Yeah. No, I meant Quidditch World Cup. There's too many contests in this movie, too many games.
Yes.
And I'm skipping over the very first scene, which is the caretaker for the Riddle House, and who gets murdered by Voldemort, even though he's like in the weird baby body thing. And and we see, that's when we first see Barty Crouch Jr., although we don't know who he is yet.
Right.
And we see him at the Quidditch World Cup again, though we don't really know who he is. We just know he's a follower of Voldemort. He's with Wormtail. So that was kind of cool. David Tennant is a big actor. That's somebody I forgot to mention when I was mentioning the cast. He's in this film. But then while we're at Hogwarts, we are told about the Triwizard Tournament. We're introduced to the all-girls school, which I can't remember the name of now. Janelle, do you know the name of the school?
Beauxbatons?
Yeah, there you go. That sounds right.
Oh, Beauxbatons. I can't remember how I thought it was Beauxbatons, but I think he says Beauxbatons in the movie. He might. And then I think it's like Durmstrang. Durmstrang.
Yeah. So we're introduced to all them, and this is when we first see Mad-Eye Moody. And this is one of the notes I wrote, was Mad-Eye Moody kind of slowly kind of creeps into the Great Hall while they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And as he comes in, the sky darkens, and everybody kind of gets freaked out, and then he's the one that shoots his wand and fixes the sky of the Great Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And my note was, why did that happen? They don't really explain it in the movie. It's just kind of his introduction, like, I'm here to save the day. But I don't understand what was going on there. Was there anything in the book that mentioned what that was?
There actually is. There's a little bit more background given. Yeah. So, Arthur Weasley is like in the Ministry. He does like the misuse of magic.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Muggle misuse of magic. He gets called to fix the problem with Mad-Eye Moody. And basically, Mad-Eye Moody is kind of accused of becoming very paranoid. And thinking there's things there that aren't there, and like making a bigger deal of things. So an incident happened with Mad-Eye Moody where he thought like somebody was breaking in, and something with like enchanted dustbins, and it just created this whole big thing. And so what happened when he goes into the Great Hall, he is kind of overreacting to what he thinks is up in, like, that makes sense? Like, he's thinking that there's something going on in that enchanted
sky.
And so he's trying to, but there's nothing actually there because it's all enchanted. That makes a whole lot more sense in the book, because like I said, they give a lot more background of his paranoia and his tendency to overreact.
Huh.
So that is
in the
what's
movie,
going on. How are you supposed to know that?
Right, exactly, yeah. In the movie, it seems like actually something is going on. Because like he walks in and the sky kind of darkens, and I think even the students are like, what's going on? And then he does his wand and fixes it, and then Dumbledore introduces him and everything's fine. So it's like, it was just kind of weird, I thought.
So he's reacting to something that's not, and so
That's-
whatever he did, Dumbledore, fixes it. But that's
Oh, weird.
what's happened. It's like he's got
Yeah.
this paranoia.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah.
so it's not really there.
No, whatever,
how
like the dark storm clouds, whatever he thought was there wasn't really there.
Yeah, in the movie, it definitely makes it seem like everybody is seeing it.
Yeah, because they all react to it
Yeah.
when it happens.
Right. But I guess in the book, it's just he's kind of seeing it.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not that it's not there, it's that it's enchanted, like it's meant to be that way.
It's not a threat, is
But-
what you're saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
Like
Moody,
maybe Dumbledore, it was dramatic lighting, and Dumbledore was like, wait for this part, and then Mad Eye Moody ruined it, is what you're saying? Okay.
it overreacted, basically.
Right.
Yeah, that paranoia came out. Yeah.
Gotcha. Stu, what did you think of Mad Eye Moody when you first saw the movie?
I like Mad Eye Moody. Mad Eye Moody is one of my favorite characters. I always, got the sense that he was paranoid, even though it's revealed later that he is someone else.
Right.
We'll get to that, but I always got that feeling that he was always the kind of person to just be looking over his shoulder, and they didn't call him. Correct me if I'm wrong, Janelle, but I didn't think that they called him Mad Eye Moody strictly because he had that mad eye. I thought they called him that because he was a little off as well.
Right. Well, and I think even one of the students, like it might have been Ron or it might be like Seamus or something, says like he's crazy. Like I think he kind of alludes to the fact that like they call him Mad Eye because he's like nuts. He's off his rocker or whatever. And so, and it's part of it is the fact that, like you said, he is somebody else. But he is.
I think
crazy.
He is like that though. Yeah.
Right. I rewatched a couple of these movies when my son was born because they were on at the hospital, and so when we brought him home, I decided to kind of continue. And unfortunately, I only made it to Order, so I haven't rewatched Half-Blood or Deathly Hallows yet. But I remember when I rewatched this movie, I had not seen it in a long time, and I did not remember the whole thing about Mad Eye Moody being somebody else. And so I remember there was something about him, but I couldn't remember what it was. And so it was actually kind of nice, like rewatching it and not remembering anything. It was like, It was kind of a cool reveal when I was like, oh yeah, he's like an imposter. He's drinking polyjuice potions. Like, I thought it was fun kind of almost being surprised by it, I guess you could say. I do say that's the one, I'm glad I read the books before I saw the movies, but I will say that's one thing that almost makes me jealous of you, Stu, is the fact that you got to see these surprises unfold on the screen and didn't know ahead of time the surprises and stuff. Like before you saw this movie, you didn't know that Cedric was going to die, right? And you didn't. And did you know that?
I didn't even know Robert Pattinson was a part of this franchise before
Wow.
watching Harry
Nice.
Potter.
And then you didn't know Voldemort was going to come back at the end of this movie, did you?
No,
when you saw
I
it?
didn't.
Yeah, so that's so cool.
Voldemort came a lot earlier than I expected.
Yeah. I remember, like, I could not wait to see that scene because I knew that he came back at the end of the book, and I was like, this is going to be so cool. And I was very happy with that scene and the way Voldemort looks and everything. Ray Fiennes, his performance, it was perfect, I thought. And so, like I said, I can understand why it's some people's favorites because of that alone. For me, it's not quite enough to make it my favorite, but it's still a very enjoyable final act of the film.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, now that I'm a parent, Cedric's death hits me a little differently than it did in the past.
Man, now I was watching it. Earlier today, and his dad's screams, they are heart-wrenching.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and even seeing Harry's parents when they show up and they're talking to him and stuff. That I was kind of like, right, that's feeling it. So the Triwizard Tournament is announced. It's going to be taking place at Hogwarts, and they make an announcement that due to whatever safety reasons or something, nobody under the age of 17 is going to be allowed to enter the tournament. But I guess there's some ironclad rule that if you get chosen, you have to play. Because Harry Potter's name is obviously called, even though Harry didn't enter it. He swears he didn't do it, but they're like, well, there's nothing we can do. You gotta do it now, even though you're not 17. And I just feel like, obviously we wouldn't have a movie if he wasn't a part of it. But I do feel like Dumbledore, somebody would be like, do we have to though? Like, like he's only 14 or whatever. So
can't we just not?
Right, exactly. Like, what happens if he doesn't compete? He'll lose. Okay. But at least he'll be alive. You know, it's like, so obviously there, you have to suspend a little disbelief there to go with it. But I did have that thought. I was like, I understand it's the wizarding world too, but I was like, these adults are terrible.
Yeah, I think it's explained maybe a little bit better in the book. The fact
yeah.
that you're entering into this contract. When you put your name in that goblet, you are willingly entering into this contract. I mean, they do let them know it's an ironclad contract.
Right.
And so there's nothing, for whatever reason, that they can do about it. And the adults at least are distraught about it. I mean, it's not like they're like, oh, no, they know how dangerous it is.
Yeah.
And they're obviously flabbergasted that it even happened.
Right.
To somebody so young, so.
And I guess I can understand that for the kids who are 17 and older, but for Harry, it feels like the contract would be invalidated because he's too young.
Right.
But again, I guess I'm not a wizard lawyer, and so what do I know?
Unless that's not actually a part of the contract, then that was just imposed by Dumbledore or
the
Ministry of Magic or whoever, and they made that decision.
Whoever the Tri-Wizard Tournament lawyers are said, if your name gets called, you got to play no matter what. I don't care what Dumbledore says. I mean, I guess I could go with that, but
I mean that kind of that negates the rule. You know what I mean? So it's like if you're under 14, and let's say Harry did put his name in there.
Right. Somehow got around the spell and was able to do it. Yeah,
somehow got around the spell and he did put his name in there. If he had to play, then like there's no consequences.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like they negates it.
Right, yeah. And so then anybody could, assuming, like, obviously George and Fred tried.
Right.
And it didn't work.
Right.
And that's why Ron is upset for a while, which is another kind of part of the movie that just kind of bugs me. Mm-hmm. Because they just need, they're best friends. They just need to talk to each other and listen to each other, and they don't. And so then they're mad at each other for so long. And I'm like, this could all be solved if you guys just talk to each other.
I mean, that's every movie ever.
Well, I know. That's true, too, I guess.
I was going to say, that's called conflict. And they're 14 years old. They're 14
that's true, they're teenagers. Yeah,
right.
That's true. I guess it was kind of, and like it's never bothered me before, but for whatever reason today it bothered me. Like when they were just kind of bickering at each other. And granted, they are teenagers, and I'm now a 40-year-old, so maybe that's what it is. But I was like, you both are just being idiots.
Like Harry went out of Harry beelined toward Ron to say, stay away from me. I'm like, bro, all you had to do was go the opposite way.
Right. But I was going to say, like, Ron is upset because he thinks that Harry somehow figured out how to get around the spell and put his name in. And I forgot where I was going with that. I don't know what my point was. I don't know, but
I don't know. We were talking about consequences and stuff.
Yeah, and because you were saying that if Harry actually had figured out how to bypass the spell and put his name in, there's no consequence for him doing that. He just gets to be in the Triwizard Tournament,
right? Which
is what happened, except that he didn't put his name in.
Right, so anybody could do it, and then just like if they were smart enough to get around the spell, of course. But anybody could do it and then just lie about it. Like, you put your name? No, I didn't.
Right. Well, like, yeah, exactly. Because that's basically what happened. Because Dumbledore asked him, he's like, "You got an older kid to put your name in?" And he was like, "No, I didn't."
No, I didn't.
And Dumbledore's like, "All right, you can play then." He's just So yeah, if Ron or Neville Longbottom or something had gotten an older kid to put his name in, Dumbledore had been like, "Did you get somebody else to do that?" And they're like, "No." He's like, All right.
Well, I mean, maybe it's just because it's Harry Potter. Because
that's what I'm thinking. He trusts Harry. I don't think he knows that Harry wouldn't lie to Dumbledore. Yeah. At least I don't. It's kind of the relationship they have.
Yeah. All Harry has to do is walk up to Dumbledore, and their house gets 50 points.
Right, exactly. Speaking to Dumbledore, 50 points for Gryffindor. That's something that's noticeably, or I get it was not noticeable to me, but now that you mention it, it was absent from this film. There's no mention of points for Gryffindor, or at least not that I remember. Maybe Snape takes points or something at some point, but that was, we mentioned how we didn't see that at the end of Prisoner. We don't see the winner of the house points, and that's obviously something we don't see in this film. It's just something that they're kind of ignoring. Again, it's not really important.
Yeah, as the stories progress, it gets less important because the stakes get higher and higher.
Yes. I have a big note for the very end of the film. I don't want to forget about it, and it kind of has to do with that. Not with the house points, but just with the stakes getting higher.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Did they explain why Fred and George wanted to participate in the Triwizard Tournament?
I don't remember that.
I just assumed, I know they booed at Dumbledore, or it wasn't Dumbledore, it was Barty Crouch. When Barty Crouch says no one under 17, they were like, that's rubbish. So I think they just wanted to play.
Well, in the book, the prize for winning the Triwizard Tournament is 1,000 galleons.
Oh.
And Fred and George want the money because they want to start their own joke shop.
Their business, right.
Yeah. And so that is the motivating factor for why they wanted to participate and why they were so mad when they couldn't do it.
Wow.
Because there's this big money prize.
Right. Yeah, they don't mention that at all. It's just, I just assumed it was notoriety. Right. I won the Triwizard Tournament.
Right. Which you get that too. But yeah, there is a money prize in the book.
Huh. I had no idea. Does Harry get it?
He does.
Okay. Oh, nice. He doesn't need it.
He tried to give it to Cedric's parents. They didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't want it, so he gives it to Fred and George.
Oh,
that's awesome. That's
great.
That is awesome. Again, I understand they have to. This movie's already 2 hours and 37 minutes. You have to cut stuff out, but that kind of would have been nice to see.
Yeah. It kind of won. It's a theme that went through the book because at the Quidditch World Cup, they placed a bet with a character who's not in the movie at all, Ludo Bagman. Oh. He's the one that actually runs the Triwizard Tournament and is the announcer. He's a former Quidditch player, like a professional Quidditch player. Mm-hmm. And he plays a big role in the book, but not in the movie at all. And again, it's not essential.
It's like they combined him with Barty Crouch, because Barty Crouch is the one that's doing all that stuff.
Dumbledore. I thought Dumbledore was the one that made the announcements and stuff during the
tournament. Maybe he does. But Barty Crouch is a big presence at the
and he is in the books as well. But Ludo is the one that... But anyways, the twins place a bet with Ludo about the outcome of the Quidditch World Cup, and they actually win. Because, again, they're trying to make money.
Right, sure, yeah.
But Ludo pays them with leprechaun gold, which disappears after 24 hours. So they didn't get any money. So they're just trying to get money.
Right. That's really cool.
So.
Well, maybe not the part about the betting. That could be cut out. But it would have been nice to see Harry give Fred and George the money. I think that would have been kind of cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Triwizard Tournament. The very first round or whatever is the dragon battle. And one thing that I thought this time around was, obviously, again, it would have been a lot of this. It would have maybe almost felt like a video game, but we don't see the other three contestants at all during the dragon stuff. It's just, and I guess it's from Harry's point of view. He's in the tent. He doesn't get to see it, but all we see is Harry's
attempt,
not a battle, but attempt to get the golden egg from the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like how the dragon, he gets his broom, and the dragon breaks the chain and starts flying after him, and they fly away from the stadium. I just imagined everybody there going, all right, kind of like looking around. But then they do show a wide shot, and you can see the castle from the stadium. At least some people probably can.
Yeah.
So I was like, they probably saw some of what was going on. But then, as Harry's flying back towards the stadium, he gets knocked by the dragon and kind of falls out of view, and everybody's just kind of looking around like I was talking about. And I wrote, how long until, the crowd is like, well, he's dead.
You want to go get some butterbeer? Or?
Right. I guess that's the end of that one. So Cedric won, and let's go get some butterbeer. Let's call it a day. It was just kind of funny to me. I don't know. It's just, again, and I guess it was just because it's such a dangerous game, and of course he's stuck with the horntail dragon that Hagrid said was the nastiest one, of course. But I just was like, well, he's dead.
There were no dragons harmed in the book. I get why they did it the way they did it in the movie. It's much more dramatic.
Dramatic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the book, he gets the dragon. The dragon never breaks the chain. But he manages to get the dragon up on its hind legs and spreading his wings, and Harry's able to swoop down and get the egg from between his legs. So he just kind of tricks the dragon. So none of that.
The dragon the whole time is just kind of standing there protecting the egg, which is, I think, what they're supposed to be doing. But for whatever reason, this horntail just hates Harry, and so in the movie, they obviously, like you said, made it more dramatic and had him going after Harry.
Right.
But I do like, from a filmmaking point of view, I love how we see Harry go for the egg, and then it cuts and he's holding it up in the common room at Gryffindor. That cut, I really like that transition a lot. I thought that was really cool. Another shot that I really liked, which happened in the very beginning of the movie, it's really dark, like they almost make it a silhouette, but it's that really low shot of the ground leading up to the boot port key. I love that shot. That cinematography I thought was really, really nice.
Yeah.
This is a new director to the franchise, Mike Newell, who I think, if I'm not mistaken, directed Donnie Brasco with Johnny Depp, but I'm not really familiar with too many of his movies. Yeah, he directed Donnie Brasco. He directed 4 Weddings and a Funeral, which I've actually never seen. But yeah, I don't know very many of Mike Newell's movies, but I thought he did a pretty good job with this film. Moving on, I guess. So he gets the egg, and he opens it, and it's loud screeching, and eventually Cedric gives him help because he gave Cedric a heads up about the first task was dragons, and tells him to go take a bath with his egg. He's like a little coy about it, but he's like, go take a bath with your egg, and doesn't quite get the hint, and Moaning Myrtle shows up. And, and she's the one that says, maybe you should listen to it underwater. And makes Harry very uncomfortable because she's just like...
Yeah, that was awkward.
It was very awkward. Very awkward. One of the most interesting things about Moaning Myrtle to me is that actress, Shirley Henderson,
is a grown woman.
At the time of the release of the movie, so she was probably about a year younger when they filmed it, was 40 years old. She looks like a teenager. Yeah. I mean, and maybe they did some CGI, whatever. They weren't quite doing the de-aging stuff quite yet, but maybe they did a little bit since she's a ghost. Maybe they were. But she looks like a teenager. I couldn't believe she was 40. But anyway, kind of skipping ahead a little bit. The next task is they have to go into the Black Lake, I think it's called, and there's mermaids down there, and they don't really know what they're doing. They just know they have to be down there. They have an hour, right? And then they find out that they have to save their friends. Those mermaids are kind of creepy looking.
Yeah, definitely. I was definitely a little weirded out when they showed up.
Yeah. So Janelle, I do have a question for you about the book, because in the movie, Fleur comes into contact with a mermaid, and she's frightened. Understandably so, because they're creepy. But then Dumbledore says she had to retire from this task and she's no longer participating. Why? I'm a little fuzzy on this part.
Right. I'm trying to remember. I thought, I don't know if they explain what they're called in the movie, but they're not the mermaids, but they're the creatures that live kind of in the seaweed at the bottom of the ocean that come up and attack Harry's ankles.
I thought those were the mermaids. I guess those were not the mermaids.
In the book, they're something like grubbly planks or some name.
Right, sure.
And they, attack Harry, but I think those are what attacked Fleur.
Okay.
And prevented her from completing the task.
Oh.
So she just got kind of unlucky
What, she just kind of got caught? I mean, she couldn't get away
Free.
from them. She couldn't.
She was like, I yield, and they were like, all right, let her go to the surface, I guess. Interesting. Yeah, they don't show that in the movie, obviously. They just kind of show her like screaming, and then Dumbledore's like, she's done. And so I wasn't really sure, because they come up to Harry like and almost stab him in the throat, and they're like, you can only take one. And so I wasn't sure why they like went after her, and because one of them swims right past Harry, why didn't they grab him? It just wasn't explained in the movie very well.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts on that, Stu? Like, has that ever bothered you, or did you?
No, that didn't bother me. But like you, I did think those things were the mermaids.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think in the movie, that's
Maybe
how they're
are.
portrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even like we hear their like beautiful song, but then when we see them, they're like monstrous. So I think they combined them or just said, they're mermaids in this movie, even though they're not in the book, I guess.
Probably.
In the book, because he's obviously concerned about all three of them, not just Ron.
Right.
And then, because that's just who he is. And he realizes later, like once the task is done, he was like, Dumbledore never would have actually let them die. And he felt really he was like, why didn't I realize that? And the chief of the Mo people come up to talk to Dumbledore about what happened, which was just a small thing, but I noticed that you didn't see that in the movie.
Yeah, no.
But
interesting.
It makes sense why they had Neville figure it out and give him the gillyweed, because he's so good at herbology and enjoys that kind of thing. But in the book, it's Dobby. Dobby is another character who was eliminated from the movie, who played a big role in the book. Because Dobby, now that he's been freed, he's been unable to find work anywhere, so Dumbledore hires him at Hogwarts. He's
unemployed. Right.
So he starts working in the kitchens or working, at Hogwarts.
That's kind of cool.
So he's there. Yeah. He's the one that wakes Harry up, gives him the gillyweed, and he rushes to the second task because he almost slept in and missed it. Oh, wow. So that was just another detail that is different from the movie.
Yeah.
Well, but it does make sense that it's Neville in the movie, because that's right up his wheelhouse. So.
Exactly. It's kind of cool that they have that Dobby is included, but in the movie, I like that it's Neville as well. I think that works very well. And I didn't remember that about Dobby at all. That's kind of interesting. Before we move on, Janelle, I have one more question about the book. Do they mention that Barty Crouch Jr. does the tongue thing? That he does, like in this movie,
Not that I recall.
Because that's one of my favorite moments in the movie, is when Mad Eye Moody comes up to Barty Crouch and says something to him, and then does the little lick, and Barty Crouch, looks at him and is like, what is going on? And then Barty Crouch is dead, and then so that was kind of you were like, he knows something, and then he's killed for it, and that was just kind of a big mystery, and I loved that aspect of it.
Yeah.
No, I've got a whole thing about Barty Crouch. I don't know if you want me to say it now.
Sure, yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, you talk about like the big reveal about Mad Eye Moody, which is a big reveal, but in the book, we don't see Barty Crouch Jr. at all, because we are told a story at some point that Barty Crouch and his wife went to visit Barty Crouch Jr. at Azkaban.
Right.
And he died while he was at Azkaban.
Barty Crouch Jr. did?
Yes. So the whole book, we think Barty Crouch Jr. is dead.
Oh.
So the other big reveal in the book is that, no, he's not dead. He's actually alive, and he's been pretending to be Mad Eye Moody this whole time.
Wow.
And so that, when I watched the movie after reading the book, I was like, what's Barty Crouch doing there? Although we don't know who he is yet, I was like, we're not supposed to see him, because we're supposed to think he's dead. But what happened was, when Barty and his wife went to Azkaban to visit, his wife was dying. And so she took Polyjuice Potion and pretended to be Barty Crouch Jr. and took his place. And she's the one who died in prison. That's who they buried.
Wow.
Who the Dementors buried. And so, and Barty Crouch Jr., Barty, his dad, snuck him out basically as his wife.
That is quite interesting. I see why they cut it out, but
yeah, I do too.
That is
so it adds a whole nother dimension. So not only do we find out, Mad Eye Moody is not who we thought he was, but then we find out Barty Crouch has been alive this whole time, and
And Barty Crouch Sr. was an accomplice to his escape.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's a whole other element, because not only is Dobby in it, but Winky, who is the Crouch's house elf, is also in it, because she's the one that's like put in charge of Barty Crouch Jr. to make sure that because he's under the Imperious curse, and Barty Crouch Sr. is controlling him this whole time. I think this whole other element in the book when it comes to Barty Crouch Jr.
I definitely understand. Steve Kloves had a very difficult task in adapting this book into a movie, and I think he did a pretty good job. And I love what you're telling me, and I think it probably works really well in the book. Mm-hmm. I think that would have been too much.
That would have been a lot for the movie. It would have been really, really convoluted.
And so I kind of like the movie version where Barty Crouch does not know that his son has escaped Azkaban.
Yeah.
His son is dead to him because he found out his son was a Death Eater, and the whole courtroom scene, the pensive, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
That actor who plays Barty Crouch, I don't know his name, unfortunately, but when he learns that his son is a Death Eater, seeing the shock and just disbelief on his face, I thought was really, really good. And then, if, like I said, that scene where he sees Mad Eye Moody do the Barty Crouch Jr. tongue flick, I just thought was awesome. So I think the way they do it in the book, while I understand people might be upset because they completely changed it,
right,
I think really works.
Yeah, I agree.
Does Barty Crouch Sr. die in the book?
He does.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a different, I forget why, but Harry and Crumb are out with Hagrid or something. Oh, no. I was going to say maybe it was, I can't remember why they were outside, but they were together, and Harry heard Barty Crouch Sr. out in the forest, and he was out of his mind and blathering, and so Harry went to go get help, and when he came back with Dumbledore, Crumb was stunned, and Barty Crouch was dead.
Oh, wow. So the final task is essentially a maze, right? Mad Eye Moody has placed the Triwizard Cup somewhere in the maze. Nobody knows except for Mad Eye. And the players have to go find it. And the first one to get to it wins. It's kind of like Quidditch, right? Where, it almost seems like... part of me wondered, who does it matter who got first place in the other stuff? Because whoever gets to the Triwizard Cup first just wins. It's kind of like all the points you get in Quidditch really don't matter, because whoever gets the Seeker basically wins the game.
Or the Snitch.
The Snitch, that's what I meant, yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But Alex was going to join us for this episode, and unfortunately at the last minute had to kind of bow out. But he mentioned that there's a lot of stuff that's cut out from this final task. In the movie, it's just, the maze kind of just changes shape, and some vines kind of capture people, but other than that, that's pretty much all we really see. So what all was in the maze that got cut out? And if there's too much, you can just give us a short version.
Well, I'll give you what I remember.
Okay, all right.
But I remember there were blast-ended Scroots, which is a creature that they had been introduced to in Hagrid's Care of Magical Creature class. Okay. And they spew fire. Oh. But at the end is the biggest difference. There's a Sphinx. So it has the body of a lion and the head of a woman who gives a riddle. And Harry solves the riddle, and the answer is a spider. So he and Cedric are racing, together to get to and this huge spider comes out, and they have to fight the spider, and they end up fighting the spider together. And then that's when they have the discussion of who should win.
Grab it at the same time,
Right. And Cedric is like, no, you won. If you hadn't told me about the dragons, I wouldn't have made it past the first task. And they just kind of have a back and forth, and then they're like, well, we'll both do it. So
that would have been, seeing the giant spider kind of would have been cool to see, but this one, there is that kind of ticking clock, because it's like the maze is kind of catching up to them. So I like that they kind of cut out some of the back and forth, and they're just like, I think Cedric's like, grab it, you deserve it, and he's like, let's just do it together, and they go and they grab it. Again, for time, probably that's probably the biggest maybe time and special effects money, but
yeah, that's
probably the biggest reason they could cut it. They probably cut that out.
Yeah, special effects, time, and we'd already seen a giant spider in the previous movie. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly.
I have a question. Was Harry injured at all when he's transported, when he arrives in the graveyard? Is he injured at all?
I don't think so.
Because in the book, the spider injures him. So he's already kind of at a disadvantage in the graveyard because he's injured by this spider.
Gotcha. Oh, interesting. No, I don't think so. He gets up and he's immediately like, I've been here before, because he's been seeing it in his dreams.
Right.
And that was another, speaking of the Triwizard Cup being a portkey, I wrote this note because Stu, in Chamber of Secrets, you talked about you loving Chekhov's gun and that whole principle of setting stuff up in Chamber, it was something that was set up in the first movie that, was paid off in the second movie. But in this movie, the boot in the beginning is a portkey, which they show us in the beginning, and then it comes again later in the movie with the Triwizard Cup being a portkey.
Right.
And transporting Cedric and Harry to the graveyard, where there's a cauldron, and Wormtail shows up, and Voldemort just murders Cedric. Just kill the spare. Actually, I guess Wormtail does it. But he's kill the spare. Avada Kedavra. And Cedric's dead. Which was a bummer.
It was a bummer. Definitely a bummer.
And then Harry is kind of somewhat captured, and there's the bone. So he that was another thing. It kind of made me laugh. Voldemort says to Wormtail, like, we got to do this now. And Wormtail lifts up Voldemort like super high and like drops him into the thing. I'm like, why did you have to do that? Couldn't you have just like put him in? Like, why did
it has to be dramatic?
Drop him from so high. And then they take a bone of Tom Riddle Sr., I guess, unwillingly, and then the flesh of the servant willingly. And I wrote, did he have to cut off his whole hand? Like, couldn't he have just cut off like another finger or a small part of his leg or something?
Right.
Like he was just like, don't need that anymore. And then they take the blood of his enemy, which is Harry Potter, and that brings back Voldemort. And that whole scene with Ray, he's just so good, and he looks so cool.
Yeah, he is scary.
He's scary, yeah. And this is the first time we see the wand duel that we get a lot more of it in Deathly Hallows, but this is the first time we get which Dumbledore calls Priori Incantatum or something like that. So it's kind of almost like I don't know what you call it,
I know the word you're thinking of. And I can't think of it.
I can't think of what I'm trying to say. Yep. It's like, it's not like a usual thing that happens, I guess. And so he was kind of almost impressed by it. He's like, Priori Incantatum. It's like something that is not seen every day, I guess. Right. And so, but that, it was kind of the first time we saw it in the movie. And that's when Cedric's ghost shows up and Harry's parents show up. And even I think his name is Frank, which I don't think they say in the movie, but in the first chapter of the book, I believe the caretaker of the Riddle House, his name is Frank. His ghost shows up too. And so it made me wonder, even though Wormtail killed Cedric, it made me wonder if the ghosts of the people that Voldemort killed like most recently showed up.
That is explained in the book. That is what happened.
Yeah.
That's what that Priori Incantatum is, all the people that he killed with his wand coming out in descending order of when he killed them. Because Cedric shows up first. Right.
And then it's Frank, and then it's his parents. Yeah, right. So that's kind of cool. I don't know, Stu, is there anything you want to say about that scene? Because, that scene is just so good, and I don't have anything else really to mention other than that. I just love it.
I'd just be saying the same thing you said.
Yeah. So. Okay, so this is the note that I wanted to talk about at the very end of the movie. So, in my opinion, this movie ends on too light of a note. Cedric has died. We get that scene with Cedric's dad, which is just heartbreaking. Harry is obviously traumatized, and Voldemort has come back. And this scene kind of bugs me. So we see Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and maybe it's like this in the book, I don't know, but we see Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and Harry goes, "Will we ever have a quiet year at Hogwarts?" And I want Harry to just be like, probably not. Voldemort is back, and he's wanting to murder me. He's like, I don't even want to leave Hogwarts. I don't want to go home. I might get murdered there. I would rather stay here where I'm safe, but they're making me go home. And then Hermione goes, everything's going to change, isn't it? And I want Harry to go, yes! And Voldemort is back and wants to kill me. But he's just, he kind of makes a joke of it. He's like, yeah, everything's going to change. And then it's just, there's this light music, and we see the Durmstrang, whatever you said their names were, and the Beauxbatons, whatever, leaving, and then it's kind of light music, and we go into the credits. And I'm like, what? No, this needs, like, I wanted it to end on more of a darker, scarier note, because that's what we just saw. But it ends, it's like, I wonder if it was a studio note, like, we can't be so dark. We got to have a little bit, we got to let people know that it's going to be okay, or something, I don't know, but I really wanted Harry to, like, freak out on them, because they were just like, will we ever have a quiet year at Hogwarts? Like, no, not anymore.
Yeah, I will say, in the book, he ends up in the hospital wing.
Okay, right, because he's injured, right, yeah.
Before he ends up in the hospital, though, he actually goes to Dumbledore's office. Like, and Sirius is there. Sirius also plays a bigger role in the book. He has much more of a presence.
We barely see him in the movie, yeah.
He has much more of a presence as the Black Dog.
Oh, okay.
Like,
that makes
meets
sense.
them in Hogsmeade, and, so he ends up in Dumbledore's office with Sirius, and the reason I mentioned about him being injured, too, is when obviously he's completely exhausted, he's in shock.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But
that's what I wanted to see.
His Phoenix comes over and heals his injuries, and all that while he's, like, recounting what happened. Mm-hmm. But he ends up in the hospital wing, and Ron, Hermione, Mrs. Weasley, Bill, Sirius, they're all there, and Dumbledore comes in. But Cornelius Fudge shows up, the Minister of Magic.
Right.
And, of course, Harry has told them what happened. Voldemort's back, and Fudge is in complete denial, denounces that any of that's true. Harry's just crazy.
Right.
Of course.
Right, of course.
And Dumbledore starts giving everybody assignments, basically. He sends Bill and Mrs. Weasley and Sirius off to, like, start, basically. And it's a better lead-in to Order of the Phoenix. Like, they understand the seriousness of this. Dumbledore believes Harry.
Right.
And they're kind of, And then the only other thing, too, is Rita Skeeter.
Yeah.
With, she ends up being an unregistered animagus.
Oh.
And she turns into a beetle. And that's how she's been getting all this information for her article. And Hermione figures it out and captures her as a beetle. And so she can no longer write about them. And that's just a small detail that was...
Right.
I thought was interesting. But yeah, I can't remember exactly how it ends. I do know that Harry doesn't want to leave Hogwarts and go back to Privet Drive.
Understandably, yeah.
But they do mention, which I didn't realize, I thought this was later. I didn't think we found this out until later, but they do mention the fact that Dumbledore has put a specific spell in place to protect Harry while he's at Privet Drive.
Oh,
he has to go back. It's something that's tied with Petunia through his mother. And so he has to go back every year to Privet Drive in order to gain that protective spell.
Wow.
And so it is mentioned, but because I know it's mentioned later.
Yeah, they should have put that in the movie, because I that's one thing that bothers me about these movies. I'm like, why does he keep going back
to
that horrible house?
Right. Yep, there's a reason behind it.
Exactly, and the Weasleys would gladly take him in.
Yeah.
So yeah, why does he keep going? Yeah, that needed to be explained in the movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there is the scene with Dumbledore, where he says to him, you've got friends here. I think he might even say you're safe here or whatever. And then in my brain, I just thought he would. Then after that, went, now go home. See you next year. So that's kind of maybe my biggest complaint about the movie is that I feel like it just ends on too light of a note for what we just saw.
I agree.
But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if, because you mentioned about the whole giving his winnings to the twins.
Right.
Because he mentions the line is, we need more laughter in the world. Like, he wants, because Fred and George are also like, after everything that's happened, and they like to joke around so much
Right.
and goof off. And, but he was like, no, you need to take this money. We need more laughter in the world.
I would have liked to have seen that. I would have liked to have seen Cedric Diggory's death. I mean, we see everybody shocked by Cedric Diggory's death. I would have liked to have seen that have more of it. Obviously, again, the movie's already 2 hours and 57 minutes. They had to wrap things up. But it would have been nice to see that have a big effect on the students at Hogwarts. And I would have maybe liked to have seen that inclusion of Fred and George wanting to win the money to open their business. And then at the end of the movie being like, we don't feel like it's that important with everything that's going on. And Harry saying that to them or something, it would have been nice. But, whatever.
Yeah. And like you said,
Instead,
it's
we
a
got,
very tough
will
job.
we ever have a quiet year at Hogwarts?
Yeah, I don't envy the people that have
writers,
to create
yeah,
the
no, I
screenplay from the book.
I know,
and
yeah. You're never going to please everybody, so yeah, I get it. Maybe we'll see that, we talked a little bit in the previous episodes about their HBO has mentioned that they're going to create a television series based on the books of Harry Potter. So obviously they're going to have the book stretched out over however many episodes versus a 2.5 hour movie. So maybe we'll get to see that stuff in the Goblet of Fire season whenever that comes out. But
that would be neat.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go into ratings. Let's talk about it. I'll go first. I definitely don't think this one is as good as Prisoner of Azkaban, in my opinion. It is very good. All of these movies are good. But for me, I'm actually going to go pretty high with it, even though I did say that the ball scene I kind of lose interest in that scene. And the ending, of course, I just ripped apart. But for me, I'm going to give it 4.5, I think, because it's still a really good entry in the Harry Potter franchise. And I definitely understand why people love it. So, and I also really like long-haired Harry and Ron.
Man, yeah, we didn't talk about that, but Harry's hair is ridiculous in this movie. I still don't enjoy it nearly as much as I enjoyed Prisoner of Azkaban or even Chamber of Secrets for that matter. But it's still a solid entry, and from an objective standpoint, it's just as good as any of the other movies. So, I think I'm gonna go 4.5 as well.
Janelle, do you want to give a rating to the movie, or do you want to just stay impartial and be our book person?
Yeah, I'll just stay impartial.
There you go. All right.
Okay.
Before we wrap it up, one thing we forgot to mention was this is the first Harry Potter movie not to be scored by John Williams. The music for this movie was Patrick Doyle.
Mm-hmm.
And in the very beginning of the movie with the Warner Brothers logo, the music is so different already.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the first 3 movies, we kind of got the dun, 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 to kind of start us off. And this one's just like dun, 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 dun. It's like right out of the gate, darker music. And what did you think of, just real quick, Stu, what did you think of the score overall?
I liked it, and I thought it was appropriate for this movie because of the subject matter.
Yeah.
I don't know if Hans Zimmer more whimsical score would have fit this movie.
John Williams, you mean?
Or Hans Zimmer. John Williams. Why did I say Hans Zimmer?
I don't know. But I agree. Obviously, we still have kind of those themes. But yeah, I think Patrick Doyle did a pretty good job with this film. So yeah, I like the score. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can leave us a comment on our Instagram or tweet at us or whatever it's called now, I guess. Both handles are at Cinema Heroes or Threads. We're on Threads, too. You can also leave us a comment on YouTube. If you're watching this, leave a comment down below. Give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you however you want to reach out to us, but I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And Janelle's here too. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.